Okay, might as well begin with the most famous thing ever said about sort of art and politics, that Washington was Hollywood for ugly people and that Hollywood is Washington for stupid people. So at the beginning, there's a certain commonality between politics and art, and also important differences. I think that we'll begin with some of the commonalities. One, both art and politics are in danger of celebrity. They tend to make their principals celebrities, which is part of the problem, and a problem they struggle with differently. They also have in common, they both necessarily, both art and politics, tell lies about the future. There's the lie of representation because they're writing fiction. It's the theater. It creates an artificial space. In the world of politics, people talk prospective statements about the future that they cannot possibly know for sure. For instance, every boy in America can grow up to be president. Well, one, that's not true. And two, how could we know if it was true without seeing the future? So essentially, the political world creates wishful statements about a future state that the public or the voters are asked to believe. But here we start to get into important differences. The artist traditionally is seen as sort of an isolated individual commenting from afar from a certain poignancy or perception that he or she uniquely has. I think this is called the romantic separation, that everybody has to live in. Artists have to live in a garret in Paris and be miserable and somewhat separated from society. Obviously, that romantic separation does not exist in the political world. By definition, politicians have to be intimately involved in every aspect, probably too many aspects of the society in which they live. I mean, the President of the United States becomes funeral master-in-chief, griever-in-chief, consoler-in-chief, feeling the pain of the nation-in-chief, all of which are sort of superhuman qualities which he actually does not personally possess, but he's forced into that by the nature of his role, whether it be in Senate or in the White House or mayor. An artist basically has a different spectrum where he can work in relative isolation for long periods of time and only has to interact with the public when he comes into the theater, comes into the gallery, or shows, or publishes. So in that sense, the worlds are slightly different. It also strikes me that the purposes of these politics and art are fundamentally different. Even though art has taken on essentially a political voice, every Hollywood star now has their own political cause that they want to be associated with. But generally, that's not the point. Generally, the books we were just talking about, they are representing life with a view to provide insight into human experience. That's not precisely what a politician is not trying to provide information or intuition or insights into the inner man or the inner woman or the problem of reality. They are trying to create political structures which usually are intended to make large numbers of people safer, happier, richer, actually not necessarily happier, richer or more prosperous. So they're basically trying to build institutions or maintain institutions, garbage collection, which is contrasted with the artist's purpose. And it seems to me that because of the nature of the differences in their purposes, they're drawn in different directions. For instance, art rewards the romantic views of man, woman, life, and artists tend to become more romantic the better the artists they get. Politics does not reward romantics, it punishes it. So actually political life is kind of a correction of romanticism. And politicians are driven to be pretty cold-blooded about getting the garbage collected, collecting the tax revenues, arresting criminals, because if they don't, they're finished. I think if artists went around arresting criminals, they would cease being artists. And so I think that there's the ethics of these arts are point in different directions. And I think both artists and politicians would suffer in either the reviews or in the elections if they are drawn in the wrong direction, if they start confusing their roles. And it would seem to me the Angelina Jolies or the Brad Pitts spend a lot of time being liked and being people that are likable, approachable, pretty, handsome, all sorts of attractive qualities. I think a president that tries to be liked is doomed. Frankly, presidents have to learn rather quickly not to be liked and not to have any friends, because if they do that, they start confusing their roles and what they're supposed to be doing in the office. So I also think that there's probably the quality of life is different. It seems to me artists have essentially choices when they want to write in the morning, when they wish to be inspired, when they don't want to write and they want to do something else. A politician doesn't have that choice. You know, at 8 o'clock in the morning, they damn well better be there, and they cannot not show up, or they cannot reflect or sleep late. And so I think that creates a certain less time to think, and less time to reflect, less time, a much narrower view of time. They have to live in the present. They do not have to have a deep, reflective, or Proustian sense about the world. They have to be here and now. And I think that sort of compresses their reality to a very thin piece of paper. It doesn't have the depth and complexity, you know, of remembered time, my parents, my past, my mythology. I don't think they can think, or can afford to think in this deeply nuanced, structured, multidimensional space that artists build rooms of the memory palace of Matteo Ricci, hundreds of rooms filled with remembrances and sculptures and depth and history. I don't think the political class does that. I mean, some of us do, but that's more because we require information about the present. We study Polish history not because it's a remembrance, we study it because it's a model and it tells us about mistakes we could make today. That's why we study it. And so it's very much looking for urgent information about what we're currently encountering. I don't think that that's why an artist would look at Polish history or Polish art. I think they would be looking for other kinds of information about what they're creating and representing and what insights it provides them for a much different. And I guess another, I think the subject of art is man. I think the subject of politics is society. Large groups, and they are fundamentally different. Individual man and group man, as we can see, particularly in Russia. Individual Russians are one thing, lots of Russians are quite an opposite thing. And so I guess that's, and it's also true, well, one, the distinctions I made weren't always true. It was possible, even necessary in classical Greece, for the politicians to be the writers and the philosophers. Thucydides was both. There's no difference between Thucydides the general and Thucydides the historian. That seems to have changed with the approach of modernity. You know, somewhat. I mean, still Voltaire and French Enlightenment, they were doing both. They were doing both art and politics. that seems to become difficult or even impossible as you cross through about 1800, or you come to the Romantic British poets, or Keats and Shelley and Byron, and then it was impossible. I mean, Byron may be the last exception who was actually doing historical things in Greece and writing at the same time. But not much since. I can't think of a major political figure who was distinguished in art. Perhaps one of the French intellectuals, dabbling in both. And this causes, I think it causes problems. This divorce causes American politicians to be very attracted to Hollywood celebrities and vice versa, because they both see something missing in not being able to participate in both aspects of the society's life, its internal artistic contributions and its public contributions. I don't know how that resolves, but it is clearly a contradiction that's associated with modern life for the last 200-something years. But it's interesting to think back on the Roman society, the Greek society, French society, the entire the court of Catherine the Great, where you would have writers and scientists all at the same part of it, participating in politics on a daily basis. I don't know what accounts for that. It probably is the mass phenomena associated with the Industrial Revolution, where the society got very wide and very equal, and I think that caused a specialization, which is maybe not. It's certainly not the Renaissance man any longer. It's specialized man. Let me stop there because I think it's an endless topic.